Hi, I'm Dr. Avanti Kumar Singh. In over 20 years of practicing both Western medicine and Eastern healing traditions, the most important thing that I've learned is that healing is a journey we take together. So on this podcast, I'll be demystifying Ayurveda and other integrated medicine, showing how these simple, ancient practices are the keys to unlocking a healthy modern life. We are all healing catalysts because healing starts within. It starts with you, and it starts right now. This is a Soulfire production. Episode number 52. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back to the Healing Catalyst podcast as we round out the month of May and Mental Health Awareness Month. So today, let's continue the conversation around plants as medicine with a discussion about the gut microbiome and the new field of culinary medicine. But first, if you've been enjoying these episodes with my incredible guests, please take a moment to leave a 5-star review with a few words about how this podcast has helped you. Your reviews are the most important thing to help this show grow and reach more people who need this information. There's a link in the show notes, and I would be so grateful for your support in helping me with my mission of helping more people take back their health using Ayurveda and other integrated medicine. As I said, today we're continuing the conversation around plants as medicine with a discussion about the gut microbiome and its role in brain health and mental health, and the new field of culinary medicine with another incredible guest, Dr. Uma Naidoo. Dr. Naidoo has been described as a triple threat, which she absolutely is, as she's a board-certified psychiatrist, nutritionist, and a professional chef who went to culinary school. She is the director of nutritional and lifestyle psychiatry at Massachusetts General Hospital, on the faculty of Harvard Medical School, and a leading voice in the fields of nutritional psychiatry and culinary medicine. Dr. Naidoo is also the author of the national best-selling book, This Is Your Brain on Food, in which she dives into cutting-edge science to explain the ways in which food contributes to our mental health and how a sound diet can help to treat and prevent a wide range of psychological and cognitive health issues, from ADHD to anxiety, depression, OCD, and many others. In our conversation, Uma and I talk about what the microbiome is, like what is it exactly, how it works, and its connection to brain health and mental health. We also discuss which foods disrupt the microbiome and which foods support the gut microbiome, and how to turn our kitchens into food pharmacies where we can practice culinary medicine. We also discuss how to use food to support brain health for cognitive function, everything from brain fog to memory issues to dementia and Alzheimer's. I'm honored to share this conversation with you with Dr. Uma Naidoo about the gut microbiome and using plants as medicine. Uma, it is so lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for making the time to be here with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Avanti. It's great to be here.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to talk to you about. You know, your episode is during Mental Health Awareness Month, and which is very, very fitting because you are a nutritional psychiatrist. You have a very interesting background. I've read your book and been following you for a while. You know, you're a board certified psychiatrist, you're a certified nutritionist, and you're a professional chef. And so I'm really curious, how did that happen? Which training came first? What led you to go to culinary school? I mean, that's a lot of training. So tell us about that.
Sure. I think it stems from my love for food and nutrition. Just grew up in a family that ate healthy food. I don't think I realized it at the time. I spent a lot of time in my childhood days with my maternal grandmother, to whom my book is dedicated, because my mom is a double boarded physician. She was in medical school at the time. So during the day, I would hang out with my grandma and would just watch her naturally prepare healthy meals, pick vegetables from the garden, eat together, have a sense of community, but also learn things like yoga and meditation from my grandparents who wanted to entertain me during the day, right? So I went into mental health training with that idea. And early on in my training, recognized there were two big aha moments. One came early When I was able to interpret information back to a patient and realized how valuable it was. He came in with a very large cup of coffee in his hand, but he was complaining about weight gain from a medication that I had just started prescribing. A, I knew it wasn't the medication, and B, he had already was overweight just from the data on his medical record. And I was able to ask him questions about this 20-ounce large cup of Dunkin' Donuts coffee. And when he understood the number of empty calories, quarter cup of ultra processed creamer, 8 teaspoons of sugar that he was consuming mindlessly every day, he was, his eyes lit up, and he felt he could make an action step. And that to me was a very big aha moment, because I realized the power of someone understanding how they could make a change, and that it was really valuable. I also felt things like mindfulness, meditation, just a holistic and integrated approach were missing in mental health. So I continue to ask questions about this type of thing. I went to culinary school. I still actually don't know how I fitted in those number of hours during my training, but I did it because I love cooking and food and really wanted to fulfill that in my life. And Julia Child had been a food hero because I came to cooking later on, because coming from a large family, everyone else cooked. My aunts, my older cousins, my mom, my grandmother. So I learned how to bake because I loved science. So Julia Child was sort of the person on free public television in Boston whom I would watch all the time. They gave me a sense of confidence and really made me feel, this was her second career. That's the one for which she is known. Anyway, to wrap it all up in a nutshell, I followed things that I love to do. I was very fortunate that by following those interests, they did come together in my work, from a very central point of how I grew up. And I think that when you make the connection between food and mood, for example, to someone, and you can then share with them something simple, even in a recipe that they can do, it makes it very valuable to them
Right.
and easy to understand.
Absolutely. So you were doing all of these trainings together. So you were in your medical training and in culinary school at the same time?
So I'd finished medical school, but it was early on in my residency. Sorry, just after residency. Early on as an attending, I
Hmm.
went to culinary school. So
Wow.
yeah,
Amazing.
so it was a lot of hours, but it was fun.
Yeah. And so it was really following those passions, but then sort of the connections that you were making as you were seeing patients clinically of saying, oh, if I can explain the connection between what's going on for them with mental health challenges, mental health in general, to their diet, and then show them what to do to improve their diet, there's something there.
That's correct. It's there's something there because they feel they can take an action step.
Mm-hmm.
They feel that they can understand something related to food. And it's something that they've overlooked. How many times do we take a headache pill? What do we do? We swallow it. We drink a little bit of water, and we don't think about it.
Right.
Where's it acting? It's going through your digestive system, but it's acting in your brain. So, when you start to unpack it for people, they start to really put those pieces together and realize how important nutrition can be as a synergistic method to feel better, along
Right.
with any medications they may or may not be taking, along with what I consider very valuable, which is the different forms of therapy as well.
Yeah. Amazing. And so, in your book, This Is Your Brain on Food, which is, been a bestseller since it came out. It's an amazing book. You talk about the connection between our gut, our brain, and then our plate. So I'd love to break that down a little bit and really get into, what is this connection between the gut and the brain, specifically the gut microbiome. So let's break it down for my listeners so they can really understand, because I think, especially during this month of mental health awareness, there's a lot of talk about the gut microbiome, the gut brain, all of these things. And these terms are thrown around, but like, what does that actually really mean? Let's start there.
I think that's a great question. So, if you think about the gut itself, the gut is part of the digestive tract, and neuroscience in the last 2 decades has shown us that there are about 39 odd trillion microbes that live in the gut. When we talk about the genetic material associated with them, we call it the gut microbiome. So these microbes live in the gut. There are 5 different types. The most studied are bacteria. That's why we tend to talk about them more often. But the gut and the brain are also connected. And these are organs that are far apart in the body. We wouldn't think that they're connected, but they actually arise from the exact same cells in the human embryo. They divide up to form these 2 organs. And then they remain connected throughout life by a text messaging system, which I like to call the vagus nerve.
Love it.
The vagus nerve is, the wandering nerve in the body, and it allows for bidirectional text messages between these 2 organ systems all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they're communicating, but then there's more information. We now know that about 90% of serotonin and the serotonin receptors are in the gut. Serotonin is the happiness hormone. It's the reason that people are prescribed selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors like Prozac or SSRIs, and there's several others as well. So these 2 organ systems are communicating, and when we eat either some healthy meals, and the breakdown products of those impact those gut microbes in a positive way. If we are going through the fast food lane every single day, that's what we're eating, then the bad microbes in the gut microbiome, they begin to thrive. So added sugars, and if you're eating kind of candy and cake all the time, those microbes thrive. And when they thrive, the breakdown products of digestion are toxic. And those toxic products start to damage a single cell lining of the gut. So that's where you develop conditions like leaky gut over time. And so you want to think about it as an ecosystem that is really there to help us with many different conditions, because those gut microbes also deal with vitamin production, sleep and circadian rhythm, which is your internal body clock, um, immunity, hormone production. They deal with so many different things, and they also help mental health. So you want to, consider the gut microbiome and the gut microbes a part of functioning well. So you want to feed them with healthy foods.
Right. Okay. And so what you're saying, if I can recap a little bit, is that the brain and the gut, they come from the same embryonic structures and divide. That's why they're connected, structurally, physiologically. But then what you're saying about the gut microbiome is that there are these bacteria that live in our gut that actually help us, right? That basically sustain the gut lining to produce things that we need for our brain
Yes.
to function correctly. Yes?
Yes.
Right.
All of that is correct. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that the food that we eat can either support that microbiome or disrupt it.
That's right.
Right. So basically, that's how the gut microbiome is so connected. And that's why it's so important, is what you're saying.
It's super important because those microbes are dealing not just with mental health, they're dealing with pretty much all the systems in our body.
Mm-hmm.
What's newer that we've understood is that these microbes are so closely involved in our mental health function. And, we want to take care of them for all good reasons.
Right. And so let's talk a little bit more maybe about the gut microbiome, and sort of what are some of the components of that microbiome that have been studied, that we're seeing there's a connection between either mental health challenges or any other challenges. What are some of the science there?
Right. So one of the conditions, we talked about the good microbes and the bad microbes, and we talked about how they can be nurtured or fed with more negative products that break
Mm-hmm.
down. When you get a buildup of those negative products, bad microbes are thriving. They create more toxic breakdown products. They damage the single cell lining, and that's when you get conditions like leaky gut develop over time. But that's also called intestinal permeability. What's also happening in the gut is there becomes this imbalance of good and bad microbes, and that is called dysbiosis. Through the process of dysbiosis, a lot of things can happen. I have seen in individuals, and remember, this is not immediate, although bacteria and microbes respond within 2 hours to food, to stress, to many different things. You don't necessarily see those changes immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have seen in mental health is an uptick of anxiety, a worsening of depression, new onset of symptoms, as someone has a more and more more dysbiosis in their gut. It can also, however, show up as skin conditions, headaches, and different things in your body. So it's not just gastrointestinal discomfort that you may have, like gas, bloating, diarrhea, pain.
Hmm.
You might actually have a symptom elsewhere in your body, and you don't think about the fact that it's connected. So the more and more that I'm studying the gut microbiome, the more I feel like it's almost like a central area of the body. So the brain, of course, controls everything, but the gut is really considered the second brain because of the number of nerves in the enteric nervous system that's around it and that work there. And the more I think about it and learn about it, the more I see how it is involved in so much in our body,
Yeah.
especially our mental health.
Yeah. And so it's so interesting, we're both South Asian. And so it goes back to Ayurveda, right?
It
That the
does. It does.
digestion was always the central aspect. And that is where we always start, is with the digestion. So we knew this somehow many, many thousands of years ago.
Ayurveda has known it. Hippocrates knew that there's a connection.
Hmm.
The sort of, I suppose, the Western-based research had to follow. And,
Yes.
I feel like many individuals who either practiced Ayurveda or who have really paid attention even to digestion. Growing up, my grandmother would always talk about spices and what she would be
Hmm.
adding somewhere, and this medicinal benefit that her mother had told her and her great aunts had taught her. And, I would eat it and happily enjoy something. But now I've, of course, understood the scientific value behind that. There's
Sure.
actual real data now to
Right.
say, there's a reason ginger is what it is or turmeric is the way it
Right.
is.
And so why do you think, this is just a maybe more philosophical question to ask, is that, if we knew this and Hippocrates knew this, right? The father of medicine, as we would say,
Right.
why did we get so far away from that? In our training, the time that you and I probably trained, we weren't taught anything about nutrition in medical
True.
school, right? We had to go and
Barely.
look for the information. Why did we get so far from this, do you think?
I feel that certainly in the United States, certain things happen. There's the industrialization of food.
Hmm.
Um, Farming and agriculture changed. Uh, People wanted their lives to be more convenient. So when things like the microwave were invented or frozen dinners,
Yeah.
these became conveniences for busy families, busy women, um, women joined the workforce. So many things changed and evolved, and I'm not necessarily giving it in the correct time sequence, but they
Right.
all impacted different things.
Sure.
But the food industry is the food industry is there to make money. They're
Hmm.
not there to take care of our health. And I
Right.
think that by the food labeling and what we know is done to processed and packaged food, there isn't much emphasis. Even though I will say a lot of the large companies have extensive research and development arms who do now pay attention to more wellness based criteria and more nutritionally based criteria, for the most part, things like high fructose corn syrup were added to food.
Hmm.
Things like low fat became a huge craze, and we now understand that was actually very bad for our health.
Right.
So, even though out of sequence, many different things happened over time, and industrialization really changed the food system. Now, how do we walk ourselves back from that?
Hmm. Right.
Where we are reliant on convenience, we have learned what fast foods are. Other parts of the world crave being like the United
Hmm.
States, so they love fast food, and so the obesity epidemics in children in China and things like that. So it's hard to know where and when things really almost fell off and
Right.
changed so much. But I think we have to find our way back.
Hmm.
And I think the pandemic, surprisingly, for some people, was a way to do that. For
Yes.
others, it has been harder. So everyone has had challenges in different ways. But where I'm at with this is I feel that, I'm here to change our conversation around our relationship with food.
Hmm.
So it speaks to exactly what you said. If we don't do this for ourselves now, and it doesn't mean we have to eat a healthy meal every single minute of every single day, because it's really not about what you have on your plate today or the number on your scale tomorrow. It's about this ongoing experience and relationship with a healthier lifestyle. And one of the biggest factors in lifestyle is nutrition. We know nutrition impacts most, if not all, of the major diseases and leads to death from chronic illness,
Right.
especially. And one of the things we can actually change and adjust is how we eat.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel it's a low hanging fruit for people if we just think about it more deeply and we start to pay attention. But I
Right.
guess it requires for someone to be open to that too.
Yeah. No, I agree with everything that you said. It's an interesting question. I mean, it's so multifaceted because there's the food industry, our food system, but then on the other side, there's the medical system, right? And sort of, I think what I'm getting at is, what went wrong in the medical system as far as how we were trained and getting away from this understanding that food and the digestion is so important, even though we may not have had the science, we had the ancestral knowledge that this was true. And so it's sort of like, where did we go wrong, where we went so far off the path that we weren't taught about nutrition in medical school?
Yeah. I'm part of an advocacy group through the Harvard T.H. School of Public Health and through the Department of Nutrition at Harvard, where I'm faculty as well. And what we're exactly trying to address, Avanti, is that medical education needs to include nutrition education.
Yeah.
The two cannot be separated anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a slow and steady uphill battle. But we have small wins now and again, and that's there are only a certain very few medical schools who even include nutrition now. Some are
Right.
better than others, but research, as you know, has been written about the gap. And I'm not sure where we went wrong. Maybe we got so highly specialized in the different organ systems, but we kind of left out nutrition, which kind of relates to all the organ systems. It's kind of interesting to me.
Right.
So, and also I think that, you know, one of the things I talk about is sort of medicines being so siloed. It's not that doctors don't communicate, it's that the organ systems are so siloed.
Right.
So, we efficient at communicating as part of our training, but we often don't really think sometimes of an integrated and holistic approach. And really, I feel like the way that I work in mental health has been based on my cultural heritage, how I was raised to think. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was always important to me, I will say simple things to individuals, and some grasp it and some don't. Having a sense of community, eating with your family, sitting down to eat, being mindful when you eat, shutting the television off, not
Right.
having your phone buzzing. While there are days I have that going on in my life, I know it's not ideal, and I try more often than not to move towards that healthier norm, because it's not just the food on the plate, right?
Yeah.
It's everything that surrounds that, because that helps. We know that when we are less stressed, we eat healthier. But when we're more stressed, we make those unfortunate choices, because
Right.
stress precipitates habit circuits in the brain. So it's all of this.
It's all of those things. Yeah, no, I appreciate you indulging me in that difficult question, because there's not an easy answer, but it's just, interesting to think about. I would love to talk a little bit about some of the issues that you see beyond the mood issues. So let's talk about, brain fog, memory, Alzheimer's, dementia. I know that you've written quite a bit about this, articles that I've seen online, because as I was doing research on sort of your work and reading in your book, I think that that's something that many people are worried about, especially as we're seeing more and more people, dealing with Alzheimer's in their families and their elders. I have a mother-in-law who has Alzheimer's now, and she was a physician, and it's quite advanced, and it's very difficult to watch her go through this. But then I can see the effects upon my husband and, his younger brother, and how they're so worried about it. So let's talk about, what are some of the connections between, gut health and then brain health as it relates to some of these memory and brain fog types of issues?
I think the conversation in Alzheimer's, where that needs to change in relation to food, is the fact that we think of Alzheimer's and cognitive disorders as a disease of our parents, our grandparents, our mother-in-laws, our
Mm-hmm.
aunts and uncles, when in fact there are subtle brain changes that occur very early on. which may or may not lead to Alzheimer's or cognitive disorders.
Hmm.
But those brain changes early on can be reversed by how we eat and our lifestyle factors. So neuroinflammation gets set up. And the one thing we can do with neuroinflammation is change how we're eating. So that's a powerful thing to know. That, of course, does not exclude the fact that we don't have a cure, or that we know and we research every single day more and more that we can about Alzheimer's. But the one thing that is remediable is something that impacts inflammation, and that can be done through our food. So it's an easy hack, really, to start to eat healthier from an early age, because we don't know that we can reverse some changes that may not end up as, members of my family or your family have. So that's the first thing, to realize that we have some tools right in front of us. We don't even have to get fancy. We just have to kind of clean up our eating a little bit and start to think about it more. But things like exercise become important, mindfulness become important, outdoor time become important. So I want people to start thinking about Alzheimer's and cognitive disorders as something we're dealing with from whatever age we're at. And an important factor that is remediable is cutting back on those processed, ultra-processed junk foods, the highly sugared foods, the sugar-sweetened beverages, the processed vegetable oils, the artificial sweeteners, the stuff that we know is impacting ultimately our brain cells. Sugar is one of the biggest issues. Then when it comes to conditions like brain fog, and brain fog is actually a very big part of what we're dealing right now with the number of individuals who've developed long hauler syndrome. We
Yes.
also know that there's an increased rate of mental health conditions, often newly diagnosed in those patients. So brain fog is huge. Well, it turns out that, there are certain foods that are rich in an antioxidant called luteolin that can actually help brain fog. And they are contained in things like certain herbs, parsley, thyme, and several other things. But how about we think about dealing with brain fog in a different way? Can we eat differently? Can we add different spices to how we are cooking to help reduce the brain fog? And so it's just anti-inflammatory foods, foods that are rich in antioxidants and polyphenols, plant-rich diets. Um, I have to quote the studies of the blue zones, because they have so many factors that they've associated with longevity.
Hmm.
And the individuals who are older in those populations are also healthy. They're healthy physically and they have healthy minds. So, they've uh, brought a lot forward in this space as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that that's such an important point that you made, is that, this is not something to start thinking about when you're in your 40s and 50s, but to actually think about it for your children when they're younger and, their teens and even younger. But, I have two college age kids. And so to really help them understand how inflammation in the body is also inflammation in the brain. I think that sometimes we forget that these two things are connected, and that we're so focused on inflammation in the body that we forget that brain inflammation causes so many of these cognitive and mood disorders and symptoms that come up.
That's right. And that was the reason to bring forth my book and my research and work in nutritional psychiatry, because, that the connection between the gut and the brain and mental health is less known. And the impact of when people think about inflammation, they often think, well, they do need to know it's a healthy process that protects the body. So
Right.
if you fall and scrape your leg, inflammation is there to help heal. But
Right.
we're talking about chronic and insidious inflammation, things brought on by stress, and diet is one of the big factors. Um, and people don't make the connection, just like they don't make a connection when they take a headache pill. They don't make a connection that inflammation is also connected in different parts of the body. And, I've seen individuals who may have mental health symptoms and a skin rash. And, over time, by helping to reduce inflammation, we know that we can help our guts heal and sort of get to a better place in 28 days, depending on the severity of your dysbiosis. Could be
Yes.
different for each person. but we know it takes about that time. But if they consistently do that, I've seen individuals over time improve with skin rashes along with mental health symptoms. So,
Mhm.
it's connected. Everything
Yeah.
we need to think about it in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a beautiful point to bring up that, again, you can add some of these things into your diet that are anti-inflammatory, antioxidant to help with your brain health, to help with your mood, help with the dysbiosis that's going on in your gut. And it's all going to help not only your cognitive function and your mood, but also these other issues that you might be having. And so it's like, I mean, it's sort of in a way the miracle cure to help with so many different things is what's on our plate, right?
It's much more powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's extremely powerful. And it's powerful not only to say it in that way, but I think it's powerful because, as you said before, it gives patients, it gives people something to work with. It gives them something that they can say, okay, I can take this back in my hands and I can do something, right? I can actually do something that's going to help my health. I may not know exactly how it's going to work, but I know it's going to start to shift things. You mentioned 28 days. So, you are in clinical practice and you've been seeing thousands of patients probably by now. How long does it usually take for a plan where you are shifting your diet and your dietary practice? How long does it take to start seeing some effects?
So I've had people have different responses, and part of this
Hmm.
is also based on the fact that the microbiome is like a thumbprint, right? So it's different for each individual. So
Yes.
more and more in my practice, Vanti, from more generalized plans, I've really moved into much more precision medicine and sort of
Hmm.
individualized nutritional psychiatry plans. A general guidance, though, is I'll have people contacting me after within a week saying, "I'm starting to feel better.
Wow.
I made these changes and these few changes, and I'm really starting to notice I'm either sleeping better, or my
Mm,
digestion is getting
mm,
better, or I'm feeling less foggy." And
mm.
this, but in general, it usually, I feel comfortable saying within 3 weeks to a month, you're starting to really gain traction with the changes, because this is not the headache pill that works in 10 minutes, right? Or 20
Right.
minutes. This does take time. That's why, I say to people, if it's your birthday and you want a piece of cake, it's okay. I just don't want you eating that piece of cake every single day, because
Right.
that's when the piece of cake becomes your lifestyle habit versus the opposite, right?
Exactly.
The healthier habits becoming your everyday life. So I've had a varied number of responses, but some people within week to 10 days start to do well, or notice changes, I should say. But usually those changes really start to impact their condition within 2 weeks to a month.
That's amazing. I mean, even for you to say that, yeah, it may not be as fast as a headache pill that you take and, an hour later you're feeling better, but for something to be able to shift how you are feeling in 2 to 4 weeks is pretty incredible. I just want to sort of like click into that and highlight that is an incredible response. And that's very, very powerful and very doable. We can do anything for 2 weeks.
We can do it anything for 2 weeks, and what happens is the more that our bodies get used to it, and I mentioned those individuals who called and contact me within a week, that's when the momentum sets in and
Yes.
people want to do more.
Right.
So, I try to give people short, small steps that are actionable, and then build upon that.
Right.
Um, Also, I think what's important to frame this for people is, we are dealing with um, conditions like depression, anxiety. We want to improve cognition, all the different symptoms in mental health. But individuals who are severely depressed, suicidal, manic, losing touch with reality, they might need acute care first.
Of
Of
course.
course, nutrition can be helpful, but when they're that sick, they may actually need even hospitalization first.
Hmm.
But once they realize that, changing how they eat can also support anything else that they're doing, it's a
Yes.
very powerful tool.
Yes.
But when people are functioning otherwise, but wanting to feel better, which has happened a lot during the pandemic,
Yes.
not everyone has been able to access a therapist or a psychiatrist, but they're not
Hmm.
feeling great, or they're feeling anxious, they can't sleep. So
Hmm.
much so that, insomnia is being called coronasomnia. So this is where these tools can be really
Right.
powerful to
Right.
help you feel better.
Yeah, I know. And the listeners can't see you, but there's a huge smile on your face as we're talking about the power of seeing these changes in patients within 2 to 4 weeks. There's nothing more gratifying as a practitioner than to see the transformation that happens for patients, and how they feel so empowered. So I really love that. And your smile is huge. So I know that that's why you're doing the work that you're doing. Okay. So let's move into this connection between the brain and the plate, right? And so, there's this whole new field, nutritional psychiatry, but then also culinary medicine. And we've talked a little bit about, what's going on in medical schools and medical training, and you're a trained chef. So what's your perspective on this idea of culinary medicine?
I think it's great. I write a column on culinary medicine for the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine, and
Hmm.
I love it. I mean, I think that the more that we can educate, learn, empower physicians, clinicians, and our patients,
Yes,
the better our health can be. We talked earlier on about how did we end up in this place. Well, how can we, if we reverse engineer that, and we think, well, how can we walk ourselves back from this difficult
sure.
place of how we're eating? That these are some of the tools. I mean, I think that the educational component for me has become so extremely important in the work that I'm doing. Um, just as an aside, I wasn't on social media. I think I may have had a Facebook account in my family, because my siblings are overseas. But I, really went to social media because of the message of the book.
Hmm.
And I use social media specifically, while it has its ups and downs, we use it specifically for education. And that's the only way that we can spread this message, right?
Yeah,
And change this conversation
right.
around food.
Literally, culinary medicine is this idea that you can cook your way out of illness, right? And cook your way towards health, which I think is so, again, very, very powerful. And so, how can we, as individuals who are listening, myself and all the people who are listening to this podcast, how can we start to sort of turn our kitchens into a pharmacy and into a place where we can actually practice culinary medicine from your perspective, with all the training you've had and the experience? What are some ways to get started?
So, if we were to put together these two areas, right? So, nutritional psychiatry is really the nexus of your mental health and how nutrition can impact that. Culinary medicine is really creating those tools to help you towards your overall health, and I think the two are related. So, it's a beautiful thing, because if it's another thing that COVID taught us. Was that our metabolic health is so important. And so many about studies show that about 88% of Americans have some abnormal factor in terms of their metabolic health. So none of us is really perfect. And one way we can do it is to eat ourselves healthy. So if you were to put those two arms together, one way, chapter 11 of This Is Your Brain on Food, I talk about how to set up your kitchen. And I shared that because I went to cooking later in life, having been spoiled by a very wonderful family,
Hmm.
cooked many delicious meals.
Me as
So I
well.
had to sort of start from scratch. And culinary school really helped the structure of that. You learn discipline, you really learn how to do things in a way that is practical, efficient, with speed, but also, you think about things like you don't want to waste food. So just thinking in those terms can be super helpful. And just what equipment you buy in your kitchen. You don't need a lot. You just need
Right.
a few simple tools to get yourself going. So the more simple we can make this process, the more attainable it feels to any one of us. Um, Simple things to start with is, sort of change out the environment of what you have in your kitchen. If the pandemic has, brought in a bunch of cookies to
Yeah.
your kitchen cabinet, so a ton of ice cream, it's time to sort of walk ourselves back from that, right? I ask people to switch out what's in their kitchen cabinet, start to put in healthier options, rethink what's in their fridge, start to cut back on sodas and diet sodas, start to move towards, filtered water, just plain water, add berries of citrus to it. Um, think about, how are you going to organize your grocery shopping? Moving towards cleaner proteins, more produce, more plant-rich foods, all those fiber-rich foods, because fiber actually nurtures the gut microbes. So it's really important to lean into vegetables, berries, fruit, nuts, seeds, legumes, lentils, all of those foods.
Mm-hmm.
Um, think about what you have in your kitchen cabinet or your table. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have some nuts? But if you have nuts, have a little measuring, quarter cup with it, because nuts are delicious. We want to eat so many more. Can you switch out the cookies for a bowl of fruit? Can you keep clementines in the fridge, because that's a juicy snack that the kids or someone can pick up if they're hungry. And I love meal prep. I love meal prep and batch cooking. So if some of the meals during the week can be done ahead or prepped ahead efficiently, your dinner time, your lunchtime is so much more smoother.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps families as well. And
Right.
those are really some steps towards moving down that food pharmacy path.
Yeah. So it's really reorganizing your kitchen, rethinking your kitchen cabinets, your fridge. What do you have on hand to be able to make? Because you need some of those staples and those things
Right.
to be able to
Hmm.
create these foods, right? And so I think that's a great tip. And so I'm going to get even more granular in particular. So from your perspective as a culinary chef, what would you say are three important kitchen skills that we should all really prioritize learning, practicing, maybe teaching to our children so that they can start to feel like they can cook?
So one thing is having one simple thing is just having the right equipment, right?
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize that if you have a blunt knife, you can actually injure yourself much more than having a sharp knife, a clean chopping board, and just some simple utensils to use. So start with getting yourself set up, or just, clear the, all of us have clutter in our kitchen, clear out the clutter and take out the pieces you're going to use.
Sure.
And if you have children who are old enough to safely use that, or you can supervise, have them get handy with these too.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing associated with is going to be preparation. So being thoughtful about a grocery list, buying lots of produce that the family participates in, colorful, the greater the color variety of your fruit and vegetables, the greater the biodiversity of what you're going to be feeding your gut. So planning your grocery list, setting up your kitchen, and in the grocery list, really thinking about the healthy foods that you want to increase. Um, for brain health, things like legumes, dried or canned, organic, canned salmon. If you don't want to buy fresh, or it's maybe out of your budget, becomes those things become important. Really loading up on the produce and getting clean sources of protein. So if you're vegetarian, it could be tofu, lots of lentils and beans. If you consume meat, it's just, if you can, try to get organic grass-fed meats, omega-3 pasture-raised eggs. If you consume eggs, the source of food becomes important. So set up your kitchen, really pay attention to planning your grocery list out. Think about really the source of your food, and look at lists like the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, which we post,
Mm-hmm.
and they're from the EWG. And balance your budget in terms of
Sure.
what you buy. And then the third skill I would say is that it's more of a almost like a rethinking of something, which is, if you're making something and it's deep fried in oil, what can you do? Well, you can make a crunchy zucchini chip in an air fryer oven. You can add vegetables to your diet. You don't have to make it complicated. You can use frozen vegetables which don't have added sour syrups or sugar, or salt in them, and steam them in a glass bowl in the microwave or on the stove top. Some people are concerned about microwaves, and it's pretty quick to steam them on a stove top, and it's a quick vegetable side for a large family or small family. And you don't even have to do much to it. A squeeze of lemon and a pinch of salt are some of the best tips I learned in culinary school for
Sure.
what they do to the flavor of food.
Mm-hmm.
Another great tip is, get a lemon zester and zest some lemon or citrus on those veggies. So, three things to kind of set yourself up for success in the kitchen.
Yeah, no, I think those are great tips. And I think if I can add one, I think that learning proper knife skills is so important. I mean, I learned how to chop and, all those things from my mother, but, she just learned the way she learned in India. And that's very effective too. But I found that when I learned how to chop vegetables, because I am vegetarian, it made it more fun and it made it
Right.
faster. And understanding that I need a very sharp knife and all of these things, it made it a lot more fun. And I think that's also something that's really important, is to make cooking fun and to realize that this is medicine we're putting into our bodies 3 times a day. And it's the most powerful medicine that we have. And to make it enjoyable, I think just takes it to another level.
It's funny because when I'm ever asked to present a webinar, I always end with the joy of food, because it's great to talk about, rules about how we eat, or things that are healthy or things that are less healthy. And I try to be less rule bound, but more lifestyle bound with individuals. But, I think that joy is a very important part of it, whether it's that you, cracking eggs and making something with it, or whether you're chopping vegetables, whatever you eat. If there's fun and you can find easy hacks to make this work. But the other thing not to ignore, we spoke about Ayurvedic practices, is the spices are a huge food pharmacy right in your kitchen. So adding those in and becoming a little bit more familiar. If you come from a culture where you are less familiar with them, maybe just trying to play with them a little bit more and add them in for their brain and other health benefits is key.
What are your top 5 spices that you would say are in your spice medicine cabinet?
So my spice cabinet is way too big.
I'm sure.
And I'm always because I'm always trying out new spices and new mixtures and blends that I make on my own. So let's see. I love turmeric with the pinch of black pepper. I love chili powder because it's central to certainly South Asian cooking and having a little bit of spicy flavor, but not too hot. I love cumin. I love coriander because I sort of mix them up all the time. I would say the 5th one would probably be ginger.
Yeah.
Even though in my kitchen I tend to use those fresh rather than powdered. I live in the Northeast, so always have the powdered versions as well. So yeah, and obviously those spices, they have health benefits, but they come from my heritage.
Yes.
There are tons of spices like rosemary, garlic, thyme, parsley, Mexican oregano, and so many others that just have tons of benefits to the body. So
they do.
You can lean into all of those depending on what you feel like cooking.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, many of your favorites are mine also because I'm South Asian and grew up with those flavors. And so that's wonderful. Well, you've given us so many tips, and the discussion about the microbiome, I think, was just so incredibly helpful and so much knowledge there. And so this feels like a good place to end our time together. And so if I offer up the phrase to catalyze healing, what comes up for you?
To catalyze healing, pay attention to what's on your plate. Pay attention to what you're eating, because it's sort of the theme of what we've spoken about today. In terms of, if we can pay attention and identify it, we can actually create a catalyst towards our better health.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Uma, thank you so much for joining me. I so appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to talk with you.
Thanks again for listening to The Healing Catalyst. If you love what you heard, please hit follow and pass it along to a friend. And if you're feeling really inspired, please rate and review so that others can find this podcast more easily. To learn more, head to avantikumarsingh.com. And to connect with me directly, find me on Instagram at avantikumarsingh. I'll be back next week and hope that you will be too. Until then, remember, with the right catalyst, you have the power to activate your own healing, because healing starts within.